I'm Joan Iker, and I'm the pastor at 4 Mile Lutheran Church, and it's in a tiny, near a tiny town, the oldest Lutheran church in Texas. I've been ordained for 8 years.
Thanks. And how did you experience your call to ministry, Joan?
Well, I was a teacher for almost 30 years in public school and in university level, and I think it was just a slow revelation that my teaching career was drawing to a close, and it was time for something new, and everything else fell away, and this is what came out.
And what is one of your greatest joys in ministry?
Oh, joys. Well, I definitely love pastoral care. I love meeting people one-on-one and getting to know the people better, to know all the brokenness as well as the healing that takes place. I love getting into the gospel each week. That's one of my favorite things. Like, oh, what's the gospel this week? So we can hurry up and see what's, the next big thing. So that's some of my favorite.
And were there women that inspired you to think about ministry or in your ministry, or any women that you know of that you inspired?
Well, I was actually raised in a different denomination that didn't ordain women. And so I had never seen a woman pastor until I was, probably in the 90s it was probably in the 90s before I saw one pastor in the Lutheran church. I saw one, and I was inspired by a young woman pastor that we had in my home church. And I was like, oh, wow, women can do this. And I had just not seen that before.
Are there any women that you know of that you have inspired, or people that have talked to you about what it means to see you as a woman in ministry?
Well, I think that there are some younger women in my congregation that are coming along, and they have everything ahead of them, and so they're beginning to see what can happen. Fortunately, women in ministry are a lot more common these days, and so we get to see more examples of women in ministry. So I think it really helps the young girls and the young women. How
do you see God at work in women today in your own setting? Other women?
Yeah, in other women. Well, I see God at work in my council members who are leaders. I see God at work in the music as we choose hymns that are more inclusive, and I see the women, actually as some of the biggest leaders within my congregation. So just thrilled to see that. I have one young woman who's intending to go to seminary, so she's college age.
How exciting.
Yeah.
And how do you think being a woman shapes or has an influence on your own particular ministry?
Well, one of my parishioners who had not experienced a woman leader in worship told me that she thinks worship is somehow softer with a woman. And I hadn't thought about that before, but I did like to hear that. I thought that sounds kind of, I think a little bit maternal, and I kind of like that thought.
You talked in your call story about being a university professor before you became a pastor. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering what in your first career helped you to prepare for ministry. What skills and gifts and experience did you have that you are finding useful in pastoral ministry?
Well, I think I was in mathematics, and so I think mathematics is one of those things. There's sometimes a little bit of a mental block that sometimes it's perceived women can't do math. Not true, but I think it really helped me to learn to break things down into bit by bit. And that's kind of how I go about my sermon preparation, you know, break things down bit by bit, so we don't feel like we have to chew the whole thing at one time, but we take it in little pieces and I try to make it so I can understand what's going on, and I think if I understand it, then I can make it more relatable and pertinent for everybody.
And do you find that you also enjoy teaching in the parish? It's a different kind of teaching, but you have that natural skill.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I'm definitely not afraid of confirmation class. I taught 8th graders math for 15 years straight. So, yeah, so confirmation is like, not as daunting as it might be if I didn't have the experience. Not to say that there won't be problems, but at least I've had that, trial by fire. So.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us as we celebrate 50 years of ordained women in the ELCA.
Thank you.